Hello world of YouTube. We're currently in a live-action Batman drought, with the newest entry seemingly continuing to be pushed back farther and farther. Who knows when we'll actually see Robert Pattinson's Batman's next adventure. But in the meantime, I want to take you back to a time when we were thriving as live-action Batman fans. And I say we very loosely, because the subject of today's video was my first live-action Batman movie. It is the 1995 gem where Val Kilmer first donned the cape and cowl, Batman Forever. A movie I've once seen described as the most 1995 piece of media, and I am very inclined to agree with that. There's so many things that this movie has going on, from its sort of construction to its marketing and all that, that just breathes 1995, right down to the iconic McDonald's glass mugs.
Get all your favorite characters from the movie Batman Forever, including Batman himself and the Riddler, chiseled in high-quality glass.
Right down to the casting of Jim Carrey hot off of his 1994 trifecta. Right down to the subject of today's video, its soundtrack.
Only one soundtrack is Forever. Batman Forever.
Where I will be ranking its track listing from least to most favorite, and why. Similarly to something I did to a different 1995 soundtrack a couple of years ago, the Mortal Kombat movie soundtrack. A soundtrack that has had more resonant impact on my music taste than this soundtrack. But this soundtrack is very interesting. It's a sort of interesting slice of the more popular music scene in 1995, more so than the Mortal Kombat soundtrack. It was fun to go back and listen to the soundtrack and actually, like, take it in like that, because I'll admit, outside of that song, I don't really indulge in the soundtrack in full all that much. It's got some interesting selections from artists, and it's got some interesting artists in important parts of their career, but by and large, I think that it is a fine enough soundtrack, if not relatively mediocre. The movie itself, I think, is very solid. I have a lot of adoration for this movie. I think that it is a great movie for kids.
Can I persuade you to take a sandwich with you, sir?
I'll get drive-through.
Either way, we're going to be talking about the soundtrack track to track. Give it a like if you're excited. And let's start by talking about my least favorite song on the Batman Forever soundtrack, which is...
I am a passenger, and a ride.
As far as the soundtrack sounding the most 1995 in kind of the tackiest way, Michael Hutchins' rendition of the Iggy Pop classic The Passenger is that. Easily the worst thing churned out during the creative process of this movie, in like a painfully mediocre kind of way. Like, Schumacher is a man of grand expression when it comes to the movies he pulls together, and this, like, barely passes that bar, and it's because of, like, some of the orchestration, but I just don't think that the song translates well into that, with that mid-90s edge that sort of also lurks throughout the version of the song. It's just a horrible version of this song, and easily the worst thing on this soundtrack.
And into your eyes, I'm crossing the river.
Crossing the River by the Devlins is sort of something of a similar ilk of the Passenger cover that's on here, but it's not a bastardization of an iconic rock song, and instead is just a painfully okay adult contemporary electronic song that was like a thing in the 90s, and I like some of that stuff. Like, Savage Garden can pop when they want to, but like this version of that doesn't do anything super interesting. It's just this very cleanly produced song with this sort of like acoustic jangly guitar helping accent some of the atmosphere in a way that's like fine, but not like anything that I would say is absolutely memorable. It ends up on this point because just like this Passenger remake, it makes this album feel cemented in 1995 in a way that feels more like slapdashing trends into this compilation, as opposed to like pioneering some like genuine crock pot of some cool songs together.
Still I can't speak.
I don't think that this is like the worst Mazzy Star song, but I also don't think on the back of my hand I could name you like 10 Mazzy Star songs. I like Mazzy Star. I wouldn't say that like this song is as sonically interesting as other Mazzy Star songs. I think it's got a fun little arrangement that sort of adds to the swanky groove that this song has going on. It's got this like sultriness to it, but I don't think that like it fits the vibes for a lot of the soundtrack. I think had the production on this been retooled or then been like a focus to other ideas, it could have worked better. But I also don't think that this is like the best song that Mazzy Star has released that I've heard anyway. This feels like another like big name coming up in the mid-90s pick that I don't think is bad, but I just think they've done better songs. This song honestly sounds like the band writing a song to sonically transition them from Ignition to Smash. It almost feels like an introduction to that era. And it's interesting, because this came out after Smash. But it's an interesting sort of like, I'm back in a new way sort of jam that I think is like, not bad. I dig the sort of like Jim Blossom's-ass opening that gives way to like the more skate punk edge that I expect from The Offspring. And I think that it's got a nice enough chorus and a well enough delivered message that like, it's not amongst my least favorites in this, but it's creeping on like something that I would keep on my rotation if this song was on general streaming services. It's a solid little jam from The Offspring.
Nobody lives without love.
I've never heard another Eddie Reader song, but Nobody Lives Without Love is that kind of mid-90s adult contemporary done better than some of the stuff I put below it in the ranking. It's got this lovely little chill chorus, like that is a bit bigger than some of the verses, but it's not even the biggest portion of the song. It's got an interesting sort of pace that it takes the listener through. And I think that it's a cleanly produced song. It's got this ambience that sort of feels in the spirit of some of the coldness that can ride within the misery of Gotham. You know, it sort of fits the vibes of especially Schumacher Batman. I think that this is a nice little pop tune that sort of also leads into some of the grand romance that is explored throughout your typical romantic Batman subplot, so to speak. I really like the leads to this U2 song, and I think that it has an energy that matches some grand theatricality that I would expect from a Schumacher-led Batman movie. I think that it is that kind of sensual vibe to the, like, especially as this movie's got on, he really dove more into. Because this is another song that they recorded for the soundtrack, so they were leaning into that Hollywood-ass presentation on some of the, you know, ideas in this. It's giving Another Way to Die, the Jack White James Bond song, but, like, it's U2 in the mid-90s, amidst their embracing of, like, 90s dance. I think that they gel that with where that scene was leaning in some of the pop realms with what they've got going on. It's not a bad song by U2, but again, it's not a soundtrack cut that I would say cuts the mustard of their typical brand of stuff. Their album cuts certainly do stand above what this is, but this is a decent song on its own. An example of something of a similar ilk and a different breath, look no farther than Bad Days, the contribution by the Flaming Lips to the soundtrack, and considering there is a version of Bad Days on Cloud Taste Metallic, and it very much sounds in the spirit of that album. It feels like this is sort of a scrapped song from those sessions they just gave to the record labels when they asked for a song for the soundtrack. But it also just kind of feels like the Flaming Lips in general feel like a pick that like they grabbed because somebody on the cast may have liked the band if they were fielding for suggestions. They were in a transition during the 90s, and this very much like it like still feels evocative of what Cloud Taste Metallic I feel like was doing for the band, and like retaining some of that quirkiness and that sort of lo-fi edge that coded their early 90s stuff, but like showcasing more in the deeper crevasses of those sonics that I think would more get nurtured in their late 90s / early 2000s material. I like the song. I think that it's a solid song by the Flaming Lips during an era where they were making some pretty solid music. I'm not like a deep Brandy music fan. I do think she has some pretty good songs, and I love that like in her post-debut sophomore outing release during her industry side quest she was on, she decided to knock out a nice catchy little clean funky jam for the fucking Batman Forever soundtrack. I like this song a lot. I do think the production is clean as fuck. She sounds great on it, telling this like little mysterious love story of sorts. You could even see it as like her letter to the industry, considering where she went while she was not making music, even though she still did make a decent amount of music after this point. I don't know. I like this jam a lot. I love the bass. I love the funky little guitar. I just think that it's a fucking great soundtrack cut that is what I think embodies the kind of beauty that happens when like soundtracks come together and they have shit like this. You know what I mean?
They're going downtown to Mr. Gigolo. Well, damn right I am.
A Nick Cave song fresh off of Let Love In. You better believe it's gonna be heat. This album feels like it sort of adds to like the edge that like Schumacher does love to lean into, especially with some of the components of the sort of dramatics of these Batman movies. But like it's got this very gritty sleaze to it that I think is a great song and a great addition to this soundtrack, because like it's still got some of the theatricality because it's Nick Cave, so it's got some like tapestry that adds to like the sonics of the soundtrack just as equally, but like it's a different flavor, it's a different vibe to those dramatics that also has a catchiness to it amidst the drive and energy that this sort of groove of the song gets swept up in. I think that this is another just wild pull for the soundtrack. It adds to the hodgepodge of like the mid-90s artists that were popping off in niche ways that sort of fit this vision that Schumacher was sort of crafting with his version of Gotham, and like the soundtrack department trying to match that with who they pulled. Nick Cave is another artist that I think very much fits, but like it's wild that he's on the same soundtrack with like an exclusive song with Brandy and like The Offspring and U2. But I'm here for it. It's a bunch of madness, and this is just another really great song that's steeped in that madness.
Secretly I've been tailing you like a fox that preys on a rabbit.
When I said everything about this movie and its production was 1995 as fuck, I meant even its trip-hop collaboration featuring Tracy Thorn, while a bit more traditional trip-hop than the Everything But the Girl Smash single remix of Missing. I think that it is a still lovely pairing. I think Massive Attack made a great backbeat, and I think that Tracy's vocals really pair well with the dramatics of that and the back and forth relationship energy that the soundtrack has going on. It is a showcasing of the highs of 95, so to speak, and a really good showcasing of the trends that like I kind of wish would come back. I think the vibes on this are immaculate, and I think that this is a nice gem to rediscover, because I hadn't spun this in long enough that I'd gotten into Everything But the Girls. Some of the energy of this PJ Harvey song that was also like an exclusive to this soundtrack is more what I was sort of talking about when it came to the sonics of like the Mazzy Star cut, at least in some of the guitar. Because there are two songs with this real swank to them, which I think is honestly kind of interesting, because when I think of Batman Forever, I don't necessarily think this energy, but like it does fit the like mid-90s alternative landscape to some degree. And I do think that this song fucking rages. The guitars in the song fucking rip. And as far as leading into the give and take aspect of a lot of the songs on this soundtrack, it adds to that in a nice splendor. You know, there's a real like give and take in this relationship, this A and B conversation that feels like it's going on across the passion and grandeur within the soundtrack contributions on here when you really dissect it. But like, this is a really good contribution to that.
Mind bender, 3-time felony offender, demented, brain cemented, mixing the blender, illusion, mass confusion, question.
I've talked pretty explicitly about both eras that this single, The Riddler, the theme for The Riddler for Batman Forever was made by Method Man amidst his many media side quests he was on between those two eras. And like, it's a pretty good song, in my opinion. It's a bit goofy, it's a bit kooky, you know, but like, I think that like, his flow and gritty delivery match the sort of off-kilter beat that's behind this song, with like plucked strings and like orchestra crashes. It feels very 1995 and like what parts of New York hip-hop are doing in 95. On a soundtrack that has highs as high as this, it still doesn't rank like amidst that upper echelon, but like, it's pretty high on this ranking because it's a really good song. I have next to no insight into Sunny Day Real Estate other than Diary, and this song is one of the few other random songs that I've heard from the band, and it's one of those like removed from the context of the discography. But I do like this song. I think that it matches the like hero hype energy, but with like the Batman mood. It's a nice jam that has a good groove, that has just a nice arrangement to it sonically. They are a band that I wish I have had more insight into, and I just haven't. But this is a really fucking good rager that like is a good balance of those emotional sides that this album really dives into. When Jack Black did this stunt on American Idol and talked about the song that I'm going to talk about in just a moment, he described the soundtrack, or he described this movie as sensitive, and the music lends to that being very emotionally driven. And the Sunny Day Real Estate snag is insane, but like, this soundtrack as a whole has that feeling, and this is another piece of that. 8 is a rager, and it's amazing that it's on this soundtrack, even if it wasn't one of the umpteenth songs recorded for the soundtrack. Something else that is wild on its own merit.
Band dude, do you know Kiss from a Rose on the Rain by Seal?
We got you covered.
All right, let's rock it.
Absolutely.
It's from Batman Returns. The most sensitive of all the Batmans.
Hold on.
Okay.
There used to be a graying tower alone on the sea.
Yes, I'm a 33-year-old millennial. Of course I worship the ground this song walks on. It's one of my personal favorite songs that I think has one of the best cuts in any music video known to man.
You remain my power, my pleasure, my pain. To me, you're like a grown addiction that I can't deny.
It's an iconic song, and I think that while I don't necessarily love where its legacy has ended up so far, I do like some of the interesting tangents it's been on. I think it's a very interestingly written song. It's a very big ballad-esque song with just one of the most iconic choruses ever. I love Seal's Kiss from a Rose. It's easily my favorite Seal song, It's one of my favorite songs of the 90s. I'm assuming most people clicking on this video knew that, though, going into it, and were more curious about the rankings up to this point, especially as the video got going. But I do hope that you enjoyed my ranking of the Batman Forever soundtrack. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, along with what you think about the Batman Forever soundtrack. Give it a like, give you a like, click subscribe if you want to see more of what I got going on in the veins of music, gaming, or general nerdery. I drop 2 to 4 vids a week depending on what I've got going on. Thank you so very much for watching this. I've got my monthly new album wrap-up dropping tomorrow. Hopefully you're excited for that. I've been Viral Rack. You guys have good days, lots of situations, and I'll see you another day!